Good morning? Now you can hear me. There we go. First and foremost, thank you very much, Kathy. And I'm just amazed at this event that Ledyard produces quarterly for you folks. I travel all around the Northeast with my job and my career, and up and down the coast and all over the country. And I haven't seen too many forums organized this way in communities, never mind a community on the smaller side, versus a big urban area. I don't even see it in urban areas. So kudos to Ledyard. Thank you very much to Kathy and Jeff and their team for the very kind invitation for today. I'm honored to join you. It's always a personal pleasure and gift whenever I have the opportunity to speak with other female executives, no matter where I am in the country, be it a personal reason or a professional reason to speak with other female executives. I always cherish every moment. I usually come away learning a lot more from you folks than you're going to learn from me. But the point today is to just share with you, and is everyone okay if I kind of roam around? I'm not real big on staying trapped, as Ed knows, staying trapped behind a podium. But I do want to make sure I touch on a number of points with you folks. But what I'd love to do today is just take you on a little bit of a journey, just kind of share some experiences that I've had in my career, and hopefully by the end of all of this we'll have a nice Q&A, and I'd love to hear some of your stories, and I'm sure we all have our war stories as we talk about as women in business, but I've had the good fortune of having a super career, and so far I have a little bit ways to go. I'd love to say that, but I've had a career of about 25 years now, and I think I definitely owe a lot of my success, and it's taken a lot of tenacity, but I think I owe a lot of that to my folks, and I don't know if the rest of you can say that in this room, but I've been very, very fortunate to receive a lot of just love and support all along the way from my parents back when it was back before it was popular is what I like to say. I think a lot of us are of similar generations here, and by the way, we're all hiding it very well, very, very well. You all present yourselves very well this morning. Oh, first, I forgot to welcome you all to the Estrogen Den. Welcome. Whenever I speak, I love to make sure we're all on the same bus. But I have one initial question for you. Safe to say everyone in the room remembers the classic television show Leave It to Beaver? Does everyone remember that? Okay, the best analogy I can give you from my upbringing, I was raised by June and Ward. Okay, it's probably the best way I can look at it, and I was probably the female Wally in my family. Now, I think that's where I got the excitement around pearls, but my mom did not vacuum wearing them, and she didn't vacuum necessarily with that lovely little dress that Barbara Billingsley always had on, and Hugh Beaumont, and the whole clan. Just loved the family. But again, very fortunate, very blessed. So I'm one of those folks that, really fortunate to be raised with parents that were very well educated. They both worked in public school education. So I was blessed to have parents that were very forward thinking. Back in the day when I was growing up, it wasn't popular to be a tomboy. Was not popular, as you all probably remember if you were involved in sports. Anyone? Yeah, a lot of hands, a lot of nodding heads. Okay, it just wasn't cool, and I thank the Lord that today it is. And towns have youth programs funded by the town for the girls in the town. As you all know, was not the case when we grew up. You can call it what it was, but Title IX hit in the 70s, so if you were a young lady growing up at that time, that hadn't quite trickled down to Joe Average urban, suburban America quite yet. So there really weren't too many outlets for a very athletic little girl. And I didn't always look like this. I used to look like Giselle, but you work in the sports industry for 25 years. So when you're blessed or cursed with my package, my athletic tenacity, and what I thank my lucky stars for every day is my parents would say, you know what? We're just glad you're really good at it, because that's something that's going to take you far. And like I said, very fortunate to have parents that were supportive. And one quick analogy or example of that is, I remember, I'll never forget it, I was in 4th grade. I come bounding in, after playing in the playground as I always did, and my jeans or something are ripped because, of course, I always went to the boys' side of the playground during recess, not the girls' side of the playground during recess, because that's where all the sports were happening. And yep, okay, got that Chinese jump rope thing, got that accomplished, got to check that off. I'm gonna go over here because they're playing flag football. So that's the kind of young lady I was growing up. And my parents, when I think back, my parents could have really, due to societal pressure and my dad always being the high school principal in the town, definitely I could see a strong argument for trying to squelch that a bit and try to control that a little bit. But I was fortunate. My parents were always the ones encouraging me to go do. If you can beat them, you go out there and you play. So I was very encouraged, and I think I'm very thankful for that, because that really helped me be confident enough to pursue a career in sport when a lot of my fellow women haven't kind of lasted in the career, lasted in the trail, all that long. So the support side, I saw it at a very young age, but fourth grade, I'll never forget it, came into the house, walked home from school. My mom is squealing with joy and excitement. And she is running toward me. "You're not gonna believe it, Pam, you're not gonna believe it. Girls can now try out for Little League. We're so excited." I don't know if anyone remembers when that law finally changed, but girls couldn't play Little League. And I had them all beat at recess. I'm telling you, hands down. I was like first or second pick, at recess to be on teams. So, and that was you had stature in the middle school if you were the first or second kid picked at recess. You know that. Come on, you can use that in the lunchroom. You can use that everywhere. That's pretty good currency in middle school. So, she was more excited than I was. So, needless to say, I was able to try out. They drove me super early. We're first in line. I'm like, "Mom, it's not you, it's me. They're not going to let you. They're not going to let you go up to bat, Mom. They're just not going to. There's rules about that." And so needless to say, it was a success, and I was able to play, one of two girls when Massachusetts first passed a law, one of two girls in my little town of Athol, Massachusetts, that made the boys' Little League team, and both of us actually started. So, and she's gone on to a career in athletics and sports as well. So again, just being blessed with parents that provided that level of love and support early has had an incredible impact on my career, and hopefully you've all experienced the same thing. And then the other true characteristic that I've tried to pay that forward, of course, every step of the way. The other key characteristic that I think has helped me is the concept and the notion of integrity. And we all talk about that. We all profess to have it. And again, blessed at a very young age, watching my dad. We moved around an awful lot. And as I mentioned, he was not in the military. He was a public high school principal, so he probably should have gotten combat pay in hindsight. But all of those years, not only were we the new family in town, but my dad was the new high school principal. So with that, again, comes a lot of expectation, public perception. We need to manage how we're perceived, kind of all of those things, and I was not Giselle. Okay, so I was the one that did raise my hand in school if I disagreed with something. Even in second grade, I got a 2 in effort, not a 1, and I proceeded to ask the teacher why, and she said, "Because you talk too much." And I said, "But I have questions." She said, "Yes, but not when I do." So, so those kinds of lessons, so you learn those. But just kind of watching my dad, and we moved around a lot, and I would always talk to him. He would always talk to me about why. And it took me a little while to realize as I got older, and I literally was a freshman twice, so we moved in the middle of my freshman year. Not fun when your dad's the principal. That can be a little trying, so I developed quite a significant level of self-deprecating humor. Awesome defense strategy. If any of you have ever picked up on that versus going into a shell or not, I found it very, very helpful as a female in a male-dominated industry to be able to be quick-witted and use it as a self-deprecating humor is incredibly disarming. Again, I'm not walking in a package of Giselle, and in the sports industry, that's all they expected. Like, nope, you got me. People confuse me with Billie Jean King. I'm like, excuse me? And Sarah Palin, which, okay, I'll take the Billie Jean King. I'll tell. When she was running for president, people would come up to me in the supermarket. It was, yeah, thank you for not seeing it, okay? Are some of you going, "I see it"?
Change the glasses.
Thank you with the vehement, "No, I don't see it." Okay, good. Thank you very much, but whew, I got blindsided by that one a few years back. Lordy, I'm gonna change the glasses. Yeah, something, I don't know. But anyway, but I think with my dad, what I constantly saw is when I was old enough, he'd explain to me why we were moving. And long story short, I understood finally what he meant by integrity is, you all know, if you're involved in your public school administration or on your school board or you work in the school system, the principal usually doesn't stick around very long, or their contract doesn't get renewed. It's a 3-year contract. It doesn't get renewed if they sometimes choose to make changes that are in the best interest of the school and the students and that involves maybe a school committee member's niece being let go. So inevitably, we ran into that political hotbed, thus my disdain for corporate politics, and I've avoided it as much as I can in my career, because I just saw it at a very, very young age, what it did to a man with very high integrity, who wanted to just improve the caliber of the teachers, improve the caliber of the administration, the curriculum. We're going to get rid of this class, we should get rid of this, this, and this. And again, a very well-educated man. St. Anselm, Notre Dame, Columbia, and then BU. Okay, so very well-educated man. If he could have kept going to school instead of working, he would have. And they met at Columbia, getting their master's degrees in teaching administration in the library. So the two geeks, June and Ward Cleaver, ended up having Wally. But that had a lot to do with forming me. So I watched him through each of these stages, and when I was old enough, so 4th grade, 7th grade, 9th grade, watching us move and me having to get reacclimated right away to a new school and stand out and achieve. All of those types of challenges, he would finally explain to us, and I have a sister and a brother as well, why these changes were happening. And he always tried to educate us about the concept of integrity, and that you'll run into politics in the world, and you're going to have to make the choice all the time of whether you're going to sort of, hedge your bets and, okay, well, I don't want to lose my job, so I'm not going to do what I know is best for my students, because I'm not, and he never made that choice all the way to the end. And there's pros and cons to that. You can say, oh, silly guy, but he was fine with his Massachusetts teacher's pension, So to him, he had the luxury of not sacrificing, and taught that lesson to us pretty intensely. So I've really tried to emulate that and really build that sense of integrity. Thus, my particular job moves throughout my career had a lot to do with, do I believe in what I'm doing, and do I feel the environment is the type of environment that I personally want to be working in, and is it something that I'm very, very passionate about? So for me, my career has really delivered some wonderful highs and some very challenging lows that have really helped me grow as a person, both personally and professionally, and develop a much more significant sense of self-awareness. Is everyone familiar with the craze right now, emotional intelligence? Or EQ, okay? I highly, highly recommend it. I follow Dr. Bradbury. So it's kind of one of those skills that I think, again, just like integrity, we all think we do it. We all think we're aware enough until you really try to learn a little bit more about it. You realize, wow, okay, I'm not necessarily hitting it. I thought I was. I thought I was. And that's something that I've really learned maybe in the last 5 years or so, as I've transitioned into the college sport industry. That was one of the more difficult transitions for me in terms of just the sheer sector and the just the highly matrixed organization that is higher education, a college or a university. And here we are, the for-profit driven sales consultants embedded into our client, and they're a nonprofit. So the pace, you can see where I'm going with that, just oil and water. And that's how I advise and try to coach all of my sales executives, that's the biggest psychological and behavioral adjustment you're going to need to make. If you're a great salesperson and consultative marketing salesperson, which is what our sector requires, then you're going to do fine, but you could still fail because you didn't become self-aware enough. And you didn't realize all of the other intangible skill sets you needed to develop. And that's something that I'm very grateful for, that I think with my parents' coaching, as well as the transitions I've had to make and the challenges, that's really helped me become a lot more self-aware, because I love the quotes out there that talk about you can't go from a mountain peak high in your career to a mountain peak high without hitting the low in between, right? You got to come back down the mountain to go back up the next one. And I've hit my share of peaks, but they've all come with valleys. And that's kind of the ideal career. And I really believe, I know a number of folks from Jack Welch on down always talk about there's no way you can truly succeed until you failed. There's just no way, because you don't realize it and you haven't learned everything you need to learn, just as a human and as a person. So with all of that said, I wanted to give you a little bit of a backdrop just to understand my upbringing and sort of where I was coming from and the various characteristics and just capabilities that I really tried to develop because I had to, moving around a lot. There's really, that has an interesting effect on kids. And my parents were, again, very fortunate that they really helped us make that transition as positively as you could. Given we would walk into that new town and right away, boom, we're the visible family. Be it at church, be it in the store, be it at school, be it on the playground. You really couldn't hide as the new family in town or the new kid in town, because guess what? The teacher you just saw today on the first day, they're all at a party at your house when you get home. So, or that next Saturday, or the principal's hosting everybody, like, hi, Mrs. Smith, oh God, this is awkward, as a kid growing up. So you really have to develop a significant level of confidence and a significant level of communication skills, I think, to survive that. So I think that had a lot to do with my ability to achieve in this challenging industry. So with that said, what I wanted to really zero in on today is, regardless of whether I'm at a sporting event conference, or there's a lot of women in sport conferences now, finally. There's 1 or 2 big ones per year, or simply at a college or high school reunion with my classmates or my college basketball teammates, and we're all much older now and just sort of kibitzing, and a lot of them are in business as well. And regardless of the audience or where everybody is in their life stage, the 3 things that I wanted to talk about today, the reason is because these 3 topics are what we all always end up talking about. So I thought maybe sharing a little bit of how I've tried to tackle over my career these 3 particular areas maybe could shed some light for you folks. And if you take anything away, fantastic. If you don't, hopefully it was a good morning with fun stories and a lot of validation for yourself, and your own struggles. But one topic is just the challenge of being a female in a male-dominated industry. And we know with as many women that are in the workforce, we're still in the minority in the vast majority of industries, and I'm sure you all find that when you go to your respective industry conferences, right? You have to seek out the other women, and then sometimes they do that goofy, oh, there's a women's reception over here at 6 o'clock. They try to segment you off because they feel like they should, and I'll get to my story at Reebok as to, they felt they needed to put pink on the basketball shoe so women would buy it. Yeah, pink it, stink it was my slogan. And it was accurate. We'll get to that story. We'll get to that one. Whew, that was a career launcher. And the other one was, regardless of what industry you're in, male or female, but specifically female, if you're running your own business or launching an entrepreneurial startup, really the need to differentiate, right? Amidst all the marketing clutter. And I would argue it's even a little bit more difficult because you don't have the traditional boys network necessarily to tap into, especially if you're directly competing with one of the power brokers in that town or in that market, and you're trying to launch a new business and differentiating and offering a different service, maybe even better than what's homegrown and well embedded in that market, right? So it doesn't matter the industry. I happen to do that a couple times in sport, but you're all doing it on your own right now, and there's always competition. Does anyone not have competition? That'd be kind of cool, because if you raise your hand, tell me your business, I'll start one tomorrow. Okay, interesting. Okay, interesting. Okay, all right, cool. So if you want to start a business, just kidding. And then the third area. So after just flat up, we're the minority, and we know that. It's not a poor me story at all, but it's how do we win? Okay, that's where my mindset is always. How do we differentiate? And then the third area is now, how do I get recognized? All these guys have all these awards and all these kind of things and internal recognition and, my accomplishments are never in bold, but Jim always seems to get highlighted in the meeting. It's those type, and we all go through that our whole career, okay? So what I thought is those were the 3 areas, and here, let me just advance this. Those are the 3 areas that I wanted to talk about, and I'm not real big on the PowerPoint slides, so I just put up 1 slide per concept. And wanted to kind of take you through those. So the first challenge that we all always grapple with is being female in a male-dominated industry. So in my mind, I was always thinking, well, how do I've got to up my game. Again, I was not raised as a poor me. So you move around a lot, and basically, boom, my dad kicked me into the school, and I had to survive. I couldn't be a wallflower. So I had to figure out very, very quickly who the power brokers were in that school, whether I was in 1st grade, 3rd grade, 5th grade, 7th grade, or 9th grade. I had to figure out who the power brokers were in that school and on that playground real fast, right? So you take that skill into the business world. That's what I found. And everyone that's played sports, you see a lot of stories and a lot of articles of, oh, there's so many skills you bring over into the business world, and a lot of folks don't necessarily believe it or don't see it. Well, I'm living proof. I've used every single one of them, except I don't trip people in business now. I try not to do that. But I do try to win, and the big thing is I try to outsmart you. Okay, I'm going to diffuse the double standard, right? We all heard, Fred Astaire and Ginger Rogers. What's the line? Ginger Rogers did exactly what Fred did, but backwards and in heels. Okay, try that, Fred. Just once. I want to see you try to do it. Okay, backwards and in 3-inch pumps. Okay, so again, it's not a poor me. It's a fact. Okay, I grew up with my dad saying, "Understand? You don't look like Giselle." Okay, so you're not going to be cut any slack. And you're competing against the boys. So how are you going to win? You are going to have to do it backwards, and you won't have to do it in heels because you wear flats. But the analogy is there, obviously. You're going to have to figure out a way to make it look effortless, and then you have a shot at being perceived as on par. But yeah, you're probably working harder. Yep, because you have to work smarter, not harder. And that's a big thing that I learned from my dad and in the industry coming up. So what I figured out, and right out of grad school, I spent a couple of years in retail. So I really wanted to work on the front lines. I was with a sporting goods chain, managed their footwear sales, but I purposely worked in the stores and up front so I could gain some valuable knowledge. I hadn't cracked Reebok or Nike yet in sales. That was my goal coming out of grad school. It took me about 11 months to crack that, and I landed with Reebok here in the Northeast. But they said, "Pam, what are you doing? You have your master's degree and you're punching a clock for minimum wage." Anyone remember Herman's Sporting Goods? Okay, so yeah, well, did anyone happen to go to the one in Worcester about 25 years ago? Well, that was probably me. I probably sold you those shoes. I said no, because it's going to give me information I need when I get the interview that I'm fighting for 11 months. There will be a sales opening in the Northeast. I know there will, because some guy's going to screw up. So I went to the shoe shows. I went to everything. I was desperately trying to penetrate that industry. And it got me the job when I got the interview, is the fact that I understood what was happening in the last 3 feet of the sale, as we call it, in retail. Right? All the footwear industry was very, very competitive. So all the guys are in the sales force. I'm the only female interviewing for this one opening in New England, very coveted sales position with Reebok. And they said, what can you bring to the table, Pam? I mean, I know you played sports, but you team sport, you girl athletes, are a niche. I'm like, okay. So I just proceeded to just unload on the guy ever so professionally on everything that I had learned selling shoes at the wall, as we called it, that last 3 foot of the sale for the last 11 months. And his jaw dropped. Literally, I've never seen a guy do this interview. It's like his jaw dropped and he went, "When can you start?" I said, "Excellent. Maybe we'll get along." Okay. First guy I interviewed with that wasn't intimidated. Okay, that actually went, "Ooh, she might be able to make me look good." And I think I might have said that in the interview as well. I said, "Look, I've interviewed with Nike. There's 12 sneaker companies in Metro Boston. They were all based out there except Nike at the time. Converse, Puma, everybody. Ryka had started. Remember Ryka? Everybody was in the Boston area. Keds, a ton." And I said, "At the end of the day, you have to decide, sir. Do you believe I'm going to make you look good, or are you going to be intimidated by me? Because if you let me do my job, I'm going to make you look like you're the smartest guy in the room for hiring me. It's your call. It's your call." So I got to the point in the interview process, no. It took me 11 months to land this job. So I figured, you know what? I'm going to make the absolute best of it. So just to get the job, I had to diffuse the double standard and outsmart my competition. Okay, so that took spending 11 months, which no guy had to do, to convince themselves that they needed the job. Everyone was just hiring their teammates from college. Okay, so Reebok Team Sales Division at the time was all former college athletes, but all guys. So again, this is not a slam on Reebok, it's just the fact. So what did it teach me? I had to be smarter, work smarter, not harder. So the key story at Reebok I'd like to share, which kind of demonstrates that, is I'm selling, doing real well for them for about 3 years. And if you sold for Reebok back in the day, it was called the bag drag. Okay, and I walk into the first national sales meeting for the whole company. So the sales reps of the entire company. I walk into this huge ballroom. I am literally the only female. That's when it dawned on me, oh my. So I didn't really say anything, and then I saw some women at the cocktail reception and what have you. I'm like, oh, so what division do you ladies sell in? You know, where are you guys? I'm out in Boston. Oh, we don't sell. You sell? We don't sell. We're in apparel. We're in apparel, or in promotions, or in PR, or in communications. Do you like your table tents? I was like, oh no, you know, kind of started the panic a little bit of like, oh my, this is, whew, I'm just starting the battle in my career. Okay, so I'm going up the mountain, okay, great. I'm at base camp now at Everest. I got into Reebok. So I was like, whew, I'm kind of winded. That makes sense, all right. Do I have enough rations to make it to the top? And then will I be able to descend without dying? You know, as we all know, all the deaths happen on the way back down. So, you know, it's kind of one of those challenges. So I walk into the sales meeting, and they're presenting the brand new basketball line. Everyone's all excited. There's a buzz. Oh, we're going to have a brand new line, and the NBA star that we're going to build the shoe around is here. So, you know, this is a big buzz, real secret. Who walks in? Shaquille O'Neal. All right, so all the guys are genuflecting, you know, everyone's going nuts. Does everyone remember whose husband, seriously, be honest, whose husband wore the Shaq shoe? Anyone? Oh, you won't admit it. Okay, that's all right. I wouldn't either. Big, god-awful, ugly, white, blue, you know, type shoe. And Reebok had since realized that I had said to him, I said, why are we signing Shaq? And they all looked at me. I said, Nike signed Jordan. Why would we sign Shaq? You think the shoe from a big, huge, slow center is going to sell? Nike signed Jordan and then Iverson. Fast, quick, I score, I'm exciting. Versus, I got it. You know, boom, big lug of a center, right? Those shoes don't sell, and historically they hadn't, okay? And I just felt like, oh wow, I don't know where this is going, but okay, we're excited, everyone's excited. Okay, so we're excited. So they go through the whole thing, they introduce him, he goes off into the distance, and then the marketing team comes out and presents the line. Well, I had been talking to my boss about, you know, why don't, none of the sneaker companies back in 1992, remember, none of the sneaker companies had women's, anyone remember this? Women's performance shoes. The only women's performance athletic shoes I had to choose from growing up, and you ladies too if you played sports, was a running shoe, correct, and a women's tennis shoe. Those were the only shoes you could get. In the tennis shoe, literally a tennis shoe to play tennis in, was the only shoe that was made in leather on a high quality last, what they call the footbed, you know, the last, a high performance, because professional women played tennis, so they needed a good shoe. No other sport, so if you played a lot of sports, I played field hockey, basketball, and softball. So all of my cleats were men's 7s. I have the calluses to prove it from sliding around inside the toe box that's too big for my foot. My basketball shoe was a men's size 7. I always had to put a ton of inserts in Dr. Scholl's insoles so I wouldn't slide all over my basketball shoe while I'm trying to run down the court. There were no shoes made for women. Thus my quest coming out of grad school of creating the first performance women's shoes for team sport athletes. They thought I was nuts. I had had these conversations with my boss a couple months prior to my first national sales meeting for the company. And of course, the guys, we all had to go to Vegas. Those are stories over a bottle of wine. I was the only female in Vegas with 400 sales reps. Yeah, Pam went off on her own pretty quickly after the first stripper walked into the room. Kid you not, can you cut that from the tape? This isn't going to go viral, is it? But a lot of challenges back in the 90s as a female in a male-dominated industry. But again, what was my motto? I'm going to diffuse the double standard, and I'm going to outsmart you. I'm not going to work harder. I'm going to work smarter. I will figure out an angle you did not think of. That is the best offense, is having that kind of defense. So, and I got the idea at that sales meeting, because I had been talking to my boss, why isn't there a women's shoe? Oh, like I told you, you girls who played team sports, yeah, you tomboys, literally, this was said in a corporate environment 25 years ago, you're a niche. So, well, we have this little, I guess they call it a law, this little silly thing called Title IX, I don't know. They're like, what? Head of sales. What? I'm like, yeah, nothing. No, it's a silly little thing. It'll probably get killed anyway. You know, no, don't worry about it. I had to explain to the head of sales that all of the sales they were making in the men's corridor, so you go into any college athletic department, all the guys, you know, all the coaching offices, right? There's all offices, and they're always in the same building. Back then, you go into this building, all the men, I kid you not, the men's coaches, the coaches of men's teams had all the upper floor offices with windows. Guess where the women's coaches were? The coaches of the women's teams, which 90% of the time were women. Where were their offices? I like to call it the garden level. I like to call it the garden level, made it feel a little more pleasant. The doors weren't painted the school colors. You go down into the basement, and even here in New England back in the day, they were gray, because that was the same thing as a cement floor. They just painted everything gray. Like, oh, how lovely, great, it's a great shade of gray. 50 Shades of Grey hadn't come out yet. So we really couldn't go anywhere with that, ladies. We really couldn't have any fun with that at all. So I explained to them that all of those women are buying, they all have budgets thanks to Title IX, they're all buying their footwear, and you're giving the footwear away to the second and third floor coaches. Do you see the oh, it's just a niche, Pam. They're just going to buy the men's shoes. We don't want to cannibalize our own business. They're just going to buy the men's shoes. I said, yes, but they're all buying Nike's men's shoes because they think you're just an aerobic shoe company. We've got to launch women's shoes. So I had 2 months of conversations just getting poo-pooed. And, but then I was finally told some conversations were happening. So what do I make? Not the mistake, but what do I do is we're in the ballroom. The basketball product line gets presented. Oh, Shaq's shoe, da-da, all the bells and whistles, right? And then it was time for Q&A. Well, Pam has to ask a question. You know, that's just the way it is. So I 3 or 4 other questions about how cool it is, how awesome it is. So I go up to the mic and I'm like, yeah, Jim, fantastic, very excited to bring this to our clients and product line, to market. It's going to be super. Thanks so much for your efforts. One quick question though, we've had some internal talk about developing a high performance, women's athletic footwear line, and we wanted to start with basketball. When can we see that? Or can you talk about the timeline for that? Now, I'm thinking that's a fair, serious question. I didn't think I was being ignorant. I kid you not, the ball, and I'm standing in the middle of the ballroom at the weird mic, right? You had to go up to the mic at that point. You had to walk all the way down from your seat. There's like 500 people. They burst into laughter. Oh my God. If that didn't test my ability to never let it show, and I thank God I was blessed. I don't burst out into tears. I won't say the word, but I get rather tenacious and pretty intense. And if that didn't brand this into my psyche and into my brain, there couldn't have been another experience that could have ever done that for me in my career. There's no way. That was just one of those, just immortalizing moments where it was just so real to me what I'm up against, that I know I'm blessed with fight, not flight, thank God. And that's why 90% of the women were not in line behind me, and no one else was in the room, burst into laughter and, let it subside. And I said, just want to let you know, I'm not kidding. And this is a huge strategic miss by our company. The female team sport athlete is not a niche. And the last thing I'm going to share with you is a little concept called Title IX. Mic drop. And I walked away. 4 or 5 guys, who I still keep in touch with to this day from the Northeast region, stood up and clapped. And I kept walking. Walked right out the door. Integrity. Walked right out the door. Oh, I still tear up. Didn't quit. Wouldn't do that. But came back the next day, regrouped with my head of sales, and I said, you guys are missing it. I said, and here's at the end of the day, he said, Pam, I don't think the company's going to do it. I said, John, I looked him right in the eye, and I said, you give me 6 months to develop this line, network within, everybody I know within the company now after 3 years, and this will be a success, or, I'll go back and sell. And he said, you won't be able to. I'll give you 6 months to get a women's shoe off the ground, and if you can't do it, I'm going to have to let you go. I said, guess I could swing by HR, but that might cause more problems than it's worth. So we had 6 months. So they took away my sales accounts, my load, And I had to decide. So I worked with the product managers, worked with a couple sales guys that were on my side, and they said, Pam, you need a serious hit. You need serious success. What are you going to do? And I said, well, we're in Newton, Mass. I'm going to take a little 3-hour drive, and I'll be back. And I just need a prototype. And they're like, okay, so my guys over in development did up a women's, I said, we're going with basketball. We're going with basketball, okay? Because basketball programs are funded versus trying to convince everyone in the world you need to equally fund your field hockey program in college, okay? I just knew that wasn't gonna happen because I had just, I knew all of these coaches. So I called all my buds real fast. I said, I get one roll of the dice. What's it gonna be? And they said, Pam, go with your gut. You just played college ball. You know all the college coaches in the Northeast and New England because you played against them. I played for St. Michael's in Vermont for 4 years. And so I played against everybody, the Bentleys, the Stonehills, everybody in Boston. And I knew they were all buying the Nike's men's shoe. So I said, okay, let me call them. I said, ladies, if I could bring you a bad high performance, at the time, $99 was a crazy high point, okay, for a leather basketball shoe back in the early 90s. Said, if I could bring you a basketball shoe on a woman's last, so if your athlete's shoe size is a 9, her basketball shoe is a 9. And guess what? The heel fits. And the forefoot fits. And you're not going to deal with blisters and all the wrapping we went through our whole careers to play in men's cleats when they're too wide. Try that. You slide, slide, slide. I still have hot spots from sliding in my cleats and basketball shoes for 20 years. And they said, oh my God, Pam, we'd buy it in a heartbeat. I said, okay, I'm counting on you because kind of my career depends on it. I'm sort of out on a limb right now and I'm kind of hanging on. So if you guys could sort of be under me with a little trampoline, that would be super helpful, okay? Or if I get canned, I don't know, I'll be your assistant coach. I don't really want to coach, but I'll sell stuff for you. I'll do something for you. Don't worry. So they all backed me up. So first I had to get the prototype. I get the prototype and then they said, okay, Pam, you have to pick a color. I'm like, what do you mean pick a color? The guys have like 12 options, of stripes and stuff, okay, to match team colors. This is a team shoe. That's the road I went, is basketball and team sales division. So I had the head of the team sales division on my side. It's like, Pam, we want to help you be successful, but man, you're up against it. I said, I get that. Just take obstacles out of my way and don't tell anybody you are. Okay, can you this is the right thing to do or Nike's going to beat us to it. I'm telling you that right now. He said, okay, go. You only have 5 months now. I said, okay, great. So I had to make one women's basketball SKU, what they call, you guys all know SKU, right? So only one model. Men have 37. One model, make it in white. And what color did I make the logo on the side? What do you think? Very good. Light blue, royal blue, or dark blue? And I'll give you a hint. I'm in New England, and it's a women's basketball shoe. Did that give you any hint at all? Dark blue. Well, should I ask you why you said dark blue? Did you make the connection?
It won't get dirty.
It won't get dirty. Okay. Okay. That's a good response. It's not the actual reason. I didn't think of that. And looking back 25 years, I should have said because it wouldn't get dirty. But no, I didn't. There was this little basketball program that nobody was really going to the games. It was up in this little town in eastern Connecticut called Storrs. And there was this wicked, wild Italian guy from Philly who, I had known. I had played with some of his players in summer camps in Boston, a dude named Gino, thought he was pretty cool. And so I take my little sample and I drive to Storrs, Connecticut. This is back in the day. Okay, this is 1994. I'll never forget it. Again, this is UConn women's basketball back before they were anything. Okay. So what am I able to do at 3 in the afternoon, which you couldn't get anywhere near their practice facility today, right? I pull up to the back door, walk in the back door, the sneakers under my arm, and I walk in, middle of practice. Now I'm blazoned with Reebok, right? So, and I had called ahead and told his assistant, hey, my Reebok rep, I'm coming up. I just want to chat with him after practice. Okay, Pam, show up around 3. And I said, should I meet him anywhere in particular? Oh, just come to the gym. Can you imagine? That would never happen today, right? Oh, just come to the gym. Yeah, just park in the back. Just come in the gym. He'll be wrapping up soon, okay? So I'm watching one of the very early practices, and I'm like, hey, now this was 1994, and remember they go 35-0. This is 1993, and then 94 they go 34-0. I'll give you a little hit in my shoe. Was their very first undefeated season that launched the women's team sales line for Reebok. Nike copied us 3 months later. Now it's an industry, and thank God, girls from 1994 forward do not know the difference. They do not know that there was never a basketball shoe, there was never a high-performance running shoe, there was never a cleat, there was never a track shoe, there was never any kind of shoe on a woman's last that was truly at the same quality level as their male counterpart shoes. So, yeah, long story short, Gino said, in the middle of practice, he would never do this. Like, he just wouldn't get close today, but as he was developing the program. But this was back in the day where all he cared about was, Pam, we're going to be great this year. I said, yeah, I heard you're doing well. Yeah, this was early, like they were maybe 2 games in, right? And this was for the following season, so I was hitting them real early. And, or actually, it might have been preseason, but he's like, we're going to be great. You don't need your help with. Can you print up some T-shirts? And do you think you could help me, like, before our first game? Like, we have to dorm storm. No one comes to the games. I'm like, cool, Gino, what do you want to do? Do you want me to print up flyers? He goes, no, can you? I said, all right, I'll donate like 100 T-shirts, and we're just going to run through the dorms and give them away, right? And just encourage everybody to come to the games. That's what Gino Auriemma and his team had to do in 1992, 93 to get things rolling. And then they win in 94, 34-0 with Rebecca Lobo. We launched the Lobo shoe, and the rest is history. We launched the line. So that's a little story just to kind of share how you can up your game. But again, in my world, that's how I chose to diffuse the double standard and outsmart my competition. All right, so that's one phase. Let's move on to the second challenge we all always sort of fret and talk about. The need to differentiate your business. So in this challenge, how do you up your game? What I learned at a young age, again, whether it was moving around, okay, I had to differentiate myself. And I really had to really demonstrate, why I deserved this or deserved that, or was going to yet again have to try to make, the basketball team as a freshman in high school, for the second time. Oh, you're just going to be, I remember moving to the first high school, you're just going to be on the team because your dad's the principal, and then his contract wasn't renewed and we had to move. And that was like right at the beginning of the basketball season. I get to the new school, I walk in, that's all I heard. There was like 2 weeks before the first practice, and all I heard was, oh, I heard you're on the team, just as your doc's daughter. So I hadn't even made any friends yet, and you're already kind of getting challenged, And I'm like, well, why don't you let the coach decide that when we get to practice? So my whole life, it just kind of prepared me for these sort of cool, monumental moments when you realize, wow, this might have been why I've gone through a lot of my challenges, is to get me ready for when, are you going to perform when they hand you the mic? Are you going to perform when it's your shot? So all eyes were on me. First day in practice, I walk in, and if I didn't have game, that would be the talk, right? Never mind friends. I was just trying to make the team. I figured friends would come after. I was confident enough, having moved around a lot, that, the friends will come. I need to accomplish what I'm going to accomplish, because I'm not going to be here that long. About 3.5 years is basically all I have left. Not a lot of time, because in the future, I'm going to launch a shoe in 6 months. So it just really prepares you to focus. So you have to diffuse. You have to work smarter, not harder. And the other thing I've learned and brought with me at every stop is differentiate or die. Basically, differentiate or die. You have to find out what your competition is doing, and you probably know what they're doing. And in my experience, I've learned to do the exact opposite. So my first job in the industry, got to Reebok. Nobody thought a women's shoe would work. I fought to the death to make it work. When it worked, I was recruited to start the American Basketball League. Everybody who didn't know me well, be it folks at UMass, folks in the industry, thought I was insane for leaving Reebok. I said, oh, you haven't met a glass ceiling before, have you? You haven't met a glass door. There was nothing but resentment at Reebok because of what we achieved with the launch of the women's shoe. So it was very, very difficult to move up in that organization. It was still viewed as a niche. So today they're much, much different. It's much super. But again, these are just facts from back in the day. It was very challenging for any female in the industry. I have colleagues that were at Nike and left. Same exact scenario. So it's just the time, and it's at that time in the industry, that time in societal culture. How are you going to respond to it? And I always challenge everybody, fight or flight. And we have 14 nieces and nephews we're blessed with, and I always say to them, oh yeah, that's too bad that happened to you, or you got that bum deal, or whatever, okay. I said, 2 things are gonna happen, and you have to decide. is it going to make you better or is it going to make you bitter? There is no other choice in life, and that's something that I've learned. Whatever card you're dealt, personal, professional, doesn't matter, only two possible outcomes exist in my opinion. Tell me if that's a little too black and white, but in my experiences so far, it's either going to make me better or it's going to make me bitter. It's really not going to make me blah. You know, I mean, it really isn't going to make me in the middle because I'm going to keep rowing the boat. You know, so kind of my mantra is bitter or better, and I think my niece even put that on one of her license plates, you know, like abbreviated it, bitter or better, you know, that kind of thing. So that's really kind of transcended into the next generation, which is neat. But to differentiate or die, I had the good fortune of being recruited from Reebok, and I was definitely willing to leave. And I left. I just wanted to leave on my terms. I knew I was leaving, but I just went. It was pretty disappointing because I had worked long and hard, and as a little kid knew I was going to be on the business side of sport, especially when I got to college. I wanted to work for Nike or Reebok and build my career. And as soon as I got in there and the incident happened at that sales meeting, I knew, okay, this particular door is shut. This particular dream is dead. So that means there's another one out there, and that's mine to go find. Again, fight or flight, bitter or better, what are you going to pick? There's only two options. There's really only two at the end of the day. There's a lot of gook and gray in the middle, but at the end of the day, there's only two choices. That's how I was brought up, and that's what I believe. So I had the good fortune of helping to launch women's pro basketball in this country. There was definitely a successful precursor to the WNBA. If any of you remember this, the WNBA and David Stern kind of stepped back when the private investor equity group got together that launched the American Basketball League. I was responsible for launching the franchise based in Hartford, Connecticut, the New England Blizzard. I don't know if you ever heard of that or if you had any followings of it back in the day. We existed for 3 years. My franchise was the only one that was profitable out of the gate, and until last year remained historically the only women's professional basketball franchise to ever be profitable. One other WNBA franchise in its 13th year became profitable. We were profitable in year 2. So it can be done. It can be done. It can be done profitably. And the challenge here was a lot of things were going on in the Hartford, Connecticut market back in 1996 when we launched the American Basketball League. So I had been at Reebok for 4 years, recruited over to launch, and I knew I was an entrepreneur as soon as I saw how I was able to maneuver through a big behemoth, highly matrixed organization like a Reebok, launch a new line. I followed my gut instinct. It was right, had facts to back it up. I said, I got this. I can do this. I'm much more entrepreneurial than corporate, and I realized that about myself young. So each of my career opportunities since then have really allowed me to sort of help a company realize a vision. I'm not the person, I've said this to people, I'm not the person you hire if you just sort of need to maintain status quo. And that's okay. I'm not going to consciously rock the boat, but I need a goal to go after. So I'm the person you want to hire, the kind of your change agent, not the person that comes in after that person. You know, that's a different skill set. So I realized what mine was and dove after this opportunity. And I think a lot of it had to do with, I knew the WNBA was probably going to launch. They waited for 2.5 years to see how we did it and to see how successful some of our franchises were. Then they launched, and you can imagine what happened to us. The 800-pound gorilla came into the marketplace, and we lost corporate sponsorship revenue. Our TV deal went away. All of our beer and Coke deals went away because I love the NBA to death, and they did exactly what I would have done if I was them. And I was coming in trying to squash, the startup, and I had all of these resources, and they did a super job. To this day, I disagree with the business model. We played during the traditional basketball season. I sold out the Hartford Civic Center, over 16,000 fans. My point guard was Jen Rosati. Remember her? The UConn star? Yeah, and we were like 3-16. First time in their lives, the UConn fans had to watch a UConn player lose, and we still sold out. What was behind that? Differentiate or die. Okay? Needed to figure out what all of our competitors were doing at the time in Hartford. The Hartford Whalers in the NHL still existed. They were playing there. And again, this little team down the road that this dude from Philly was coaching, Gino, they had done pretty well in the last 4 years, go figure. They're selling out the Gamble Pavilion at 10,000 fans per night. And the men's team had just won under Coach Calhoun at UConn. They were selling out the Gamble. Our first sellout of 16,000 when we were 3-16 or 17 that season was on the same night that UConn sold out at 10,000. We differentiated. We found our fan base. We went and got them, and it was all about family, kids, affordable entertainment. My mascot, the best thing we ever did to differentiate the market was my mascot dressed up in costumes. Kind of hilarious when you think about it. So no matter the season that was going on, Bill Clinton was running for president, dressed him up like Bill Clinton with a little McDonald's bag with a Clinton mask, and our mascot kind of walked around, a big white polar bear. So again, just entertaining. It was an Olympic year, right? The 1996 Olympics. So the Blizz Bear, as we called them, all different Olympic performance outfits, and performed that sport at halftime. Or just during a timeout, put him on a luge. It was like an EMS bed all the way down, and he had a luge outfit on, and we luged him across the basketball floor. Just like a quick entertaining thing. Kids loved it. We had billboards. Our banking partner, as well as our hospital partner in the Hartford market, did billboards with our mascot, not even our players, because it attracted kids and families. So we figured out what the NHL team in the market wasn't doing. Their players weren't accessible. They weren't fun. There wasn't a buzz with kids in the market. The UConn team was just sold out. So if you didn't have one of those corporate seats, you weren't getting into a UConn women's game. No way. They're sold out to this day. Those tickets have to be inherited to you. You have to inherit those season tickets to be able to go to a game. We found our niche and exploited it. Didn't work harder. We worked smarter. So all these lessons are building. Last thing that we all grapple with is a desire to be recognized and promoted. And this is something that, it's always going to be challenging. But again, what did I figure out is, in addition to the other two areas, the way you up your game is you have to have patience. I didn't exactly possess that young in my career. So I've developed that pretty significantly over time. But talent, time, and tenacity. And the 3 T's, I like to call it, of getting yourself promoted and getting yourself recognized. And it all comes down to how are you positioning yourself? So if you are not the top person and the leader in your organization, then how are you positioning yourself? I saw an awesome quote from Ruth Bader Ginsburg that she called it man-terruptions. Anybody see that article online? She said, did you see it? Cool, huh? As a Supreme Court justice, there was a study done by, I believe, the folks at Northwestern in government studies. They observed tapes of the presenting of cases by our Supreme Court, right? And every time Justice Ginsburg spoke, she was man-terrupted. She was interrupted by a guy who said it more authoritatively or interrupted her. Well, I have one more thing to add to that. And her point was never made. And they said was it a year ago, she realized it, read the study, and started changing how she verbally interacted in meetings. She stopped leading her comments with the polite, I would like to add, may I offer? Jim, my perspective, no. She said, it wasn't that I became impolite. I just had to observe and learn how to speak more directly. And I hate to say speak like men, but speak more directly. Less, I don't want to say soft, you know what I mean? But less sort of introductory, or this may not be a great question, but, okay, we all second guess ourselves. Our nature is, be a little kinder, be a little softer. And for Ruth Bader Ginsburg to say, no, if you're really in a business situation, that's not the way to get your opinion, and in their industry, it's kind of critical if she can't get her opinion heard by the group, right? The vote might go the other way, kind of critical. And she made that change. So one of the big things I learned is becoming self-aware enough to really understand how you're positioning yourself, verbally, physically, how you interact with your workmates. Really just be observant. Are man-terruptions happening in your company and in your division and in your business? And are you adjusting to that? Especially if you run the business and there are men and women under you, and you notice when you have a staff meeting, the women are being man-terrupted. Okay, what are you going to do about that? How are you going to help coach her without labeling it as such? But you may want to send her the article from Ruth, but you may want to help help, help, help. I'm constantly pulling young women up the ladder and coaching them and trying to share. That's why I appreciate the opportunity today. Trying to share just simply what I've learned in my experiences, trying to tackle these rather three critical areas. But it's really about managing your personal brand, as we always talk about to the millennials today. But I think a lot of us that have been working for a long time kind of forgot that we have to manage our own brands sometimes, you know? And that takes some time, talent, and tenacity. And I just want to share with you a couple of women that do it real well. I had the good fortune of working for Billie Jean King, launching a World Team Tennis franchise for her right after the demise of the American Basketball League. So when we folded, all of our players immediately went into the WNBA. Guess what? They already had their teams set up and didn't have room for folks like me. So I was very fortunate, though. Val Ackerman, the commissioner at the time, immediately called me and hired me as a consultant. It took them quite a while to replicate what we had achieved in Hartford. And that was kind of a wonderful piece of recognition that a woman was recognizing me for my accomplishments in a competing industry after they just forced us to file for bankruptcy. And I couldn't pay my staff nor myself for the month we had just worked. But thank you, Val. Appreciate the accolades. But no, all kidding aside, it was one of those where, again, I admire the NBA. Their support for women's basketball has been phenomenal. And it's up to the sport to keep growing and make it work. But I was fortunate to do some work for her and Billie Jean King. I'll share one quick story. I know I'm on time, at time. But the December 22nd, 1998, I'll never forget it, the ABL folds. I can't pay my staff 3 days before Christmas for the entire month of December. We're a little upset by that. My major corporate partner, Phoenix Insurance, and a gentleman by the name of Bob Fiandella, unbelievable man, a huge leader in the Hartford business community. He sent his number 2 over to my office when we got the news, and I had the staff around and it hit the media. Cameras were outside our office doors. Bedlam was breaking loose. The players are calling. The fans are calling. Everyone's up in arms, all the corporate sponsors, because it hit in the news that the ABL filed for bankruptcy. All the doors are shut in 24 hours. They sent their number 2 over. This is our largest corporate partner, still one of my mentors to this day. He sent their number 2 immediately over and said, Pam, I want to sit down with your staff. And I said, they're kind of upset right now. I'm crying, so come on in, Carl. He walks in, he says, we're hiring every single one of you. And I went, oh my God, there is a God. I said, gee, thank Bob for it. He goes, we're hiring you all for 6 months. We're putting you up in our satellite location. You will have benefits, you will have your salary, you will have all the resources you need to go find a job. And if we can hire you, we will. We don't assume we can. We know you want to work in sports. But Bob Fiandella, the chairman and CEO at the time, is giving you all personal recommendations. It's like, oh dear God. So talk about, you know, just people dropping from the heavens. It was just unbelievable. So we go home that night, the morning of the 23rd. I'm assuming it's the press. My phone rings at 7 a.m. Like, oh God, it's the media again. Okay, I've got my talking points ready to go, and a great effort. We appreciate all of our sponsors and the investors, and we just, spigot ran dry. It happens, right? So I pick up the phone. I'm like, good morning, Pam Battalis. Like, stop you crying. That's all I hear on the phone. Stop you crying. Put some clothes on. I want you to meet me for coffee. Like that, and I'm like, okay, Chris. I think it's my number 2. Like just being a jerk, right? I said, who is this, Chris? I said, please, really, we're going to meet for lunch. This is Billie. I'm like, Billie? I don't know a Billie. Pam, this is Billie Jean King. And then she put her voice back. I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry, Miss King. I'm so sorry. I had invited her to our very first opening game when we opened the season. So women's pro basketball was just launching, and she came to the game and said a few opening remarks to the crowd of 12,000 people, and we gave her a King jersey and framed it, and she's become not a close friend, but definitely a mentor and someone that I've observed and kept in touch with my whole career. And that next morning, she hired me as a consultant. She said, you've done a phenomenal thing. I've watched you here in Hartford. There's an incredible fan base for women's sports. I want to launch a World Team Tennis franchise, her baby, right? World Team Tennis franchise in Hartford, and you're going to set it up for me. I was like, you got to be kidding me. This is unbelievable. So I had the good fortune of working for her, and one of the legends of all time in women's sports, and the queen of the quote. And her big thing is, a champion is afraid of losing. Everyone else is afraid of winning. Do I keep going out of range? Sorry about that. I don't know if it's not working. There we go. And then, obviously, Justice Ruth, or as we like to call her, J-Roo. Justice Ruth, yeah, so if you're hip to that smack daddy with the J-Roo, just go with the J-Roo. And I love this quote. I have it up in my office. When, I realize you probably can't read it, it's not large, but when I'm sometimes asked, when will there be enough women on the Supreme Court? And I say, when there are 9, people are shocked. But there's already been 9 men, and no one's ever raised a question about that. Little food for thought. J-Roo. And last but not least, I want to thank you all for the time. And again, someone we all admire, Gloria Steinem, or G-Sty. Gloria, if you can read this, you're laughing, but we are becoming the men we wanted to marry. And with that, I empower all of you, and thank you so much for your time, tenacity, and talent. Thank you.